Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Jake Gordon and Alex Lord. Last night, the Braves got off their little skid of losing 3 in a row. Max Fried, he did what we talked about Spencer Strider needed to do. He didn't have his best stuff. He gave up a few runs, but this is what makes Max Fried so great. He's unflappable, and he just always seems to give the team a chance to win. Eventually, the Braves bats woke up. Specifically, Ronald Acuna Jr., who had 2 homers, almost had 3. He almost had 3. He hit one to the wall that would have hit off the top of the wall. Very close to having a 3-homer night. He now has 34 homers. He is right on pace to have 40-70. And if there's anybody still talking about the MVP race, just put a sock in it. That's all I have to say, because 40-70, he has a chance to go 40-70-100. That will be one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen in the history of the game. And I think 40-70 is definitely a record that could never be broken again in our lifetimes. Because I just, Alex, before we got on here, I asked you, who even right now in the game could even like get 70 steals and then on top of that get 40 homers? Because I don't think there's very many players in the game that could get 70 steals. And then on top of that, you have to hit 40 homers. What he's done is amazing. The BSR stat might be the worst stat in the history of baseball. It might be the worst stat in the history of baseball.
If you ever say BSR to me, shut up, nerd. Like, actually, like we need to take the sport back from these people at some point. Shut up, nerd. Shut up. Stupid. You're saying stupid things.
Go chew on rocks, dude. Like, literally chew on rocks and snort glue. Like, I'm sick and tired of it, dude. If there's a stat that it's like if there's a stat that can't like correctly depict how valuable Ronald Acuna has been on the base pass this year, if they don't say he's the best base runner in the league by a country mile, then that stat sucks. That shouldn't be around.
I've been thinking about this too. This is just like a mini rant while we're on the topic of this. I wonder when the nerds are going to turn on war, because it is going to happen at some point. At a certain point, they're not going to like war anymore, and we're going to talk about war like we talk about batting average. I guess it's when they come up with something different, but I'm going to squat on that one. I give it like 3 years before they turn on war.
And I've been begging guys to just stop watching games, and it's not just baseball. There's an epidemic in sports of analytically driven narratives that are just terrible for the sport. I'm begging everybody to stop watching sports through an Excel spreadsheet. Listen, to say it's not valuable would be lying. It's valuable. You can use it as a supplementary tool when you give analysis, predictions, everything in between. But to root your entire argument, narrative, whatever you're saying, in one single metric or a bunch of like rudimentary metrics, it's just naive. And it makes you sound like it'll never appeal to the masses, because that's just not like, we don't like to hear that, and we love sports. Imagine what the casuals hear when you say that stuff. They hate it. I don't know. You'll never, grow your audience or even, bring valuable conversations to the table when all you talk about is numbers, this, that number, and Excel spreadsheets. I hate it. And listen, I do think they're valuable in certain instances, but for the most part, they're worthless. And you get a lot more from using your eyeballs, than what an Excel spreadsheet says. And Ronald Acuna Jr., I don't care what stat it says. It could be base running. It could be defense. He's arguably the most well-rounded player in baseball. Ohtani's an alien. That doesn't really count. And the only guy who could even come close is Corbin Carroll. And I would argue that Ronald Acuna reaches 40-70. Let's say he reaches it. I bet he reaches it again before somebody even gets close to it.
Yeah, just on the topic of you talking about these nerds and their stupid stats, I had a guy get on like a comment on one of my TikToks. Go follow it at Sports Talk ATL. Comment on one of my TikToks, just talking about how Spencer Strider's fastball is the problem. Like, it was a 20-run value. Now it's a -1. And I'm like, dude, there's a reason for that. It's because when he can't locate his slider and stuff like that, he turns into a one-pitch pitcher, and the guys sit on the fastball, and they've learned on that, and they have some scouting on it. It's not that the fastball is a bad pitch. Watch the games. Watch why that fastball is getting hit. You can't tell me that it's a bad pitch simply because it says this on this stupid spreadsheet. Like, you have to have context to why it is getting hit harder, and all a lot of these guys can listen to. And like, about the BSR stat, all it does is talk about like going first to third, going first to home, stealing bases, getting caught stealing. That's how it like evaluates. It doesn't take into account what the pitcher is going through every time Ronald Acuna is on first base, the pressure he puts on opposing defenses, the pressure he puts on the pitcher. There's a reason Matt Olson might break the home run record having Ronald Acuna on base every single time. And he talks about it. He said it many times this season, how the game is so much easier because Ronald's always on first base, distracting the pitcher and stuff like that. And they have to affect that. It affects the way they it affects their timing. It affects the concentration. It affects the pitches that they throw because they don't want him stealing second base. None of that can be evaluated in BSR because you can't evaluate that and you can't put that in a spreadsheet because that's not analytics. That's the human element that you can, like you said, watch with your two eyes. Yeah, that's my rant. But listen, none of that can be evaluated. You can't tell me, you can't put that on a spreadsheet.
What's even crazier about all of this is we're talking about 40 home runs and 70 steals, bigger bases, the pickoff moves, all that aside, he's only ascending. Like the only thing that's stopping him from going into the Hall of Fame is health, longevity. I mean, Ronald Acuna is starting to put it together up here, and we're seeing what, physical greatness with all the other intangibles brings together. It's history. I mean, it really is.
I do love the the pickoff moves and the bigger bases. One of my followers, he replied to somebody. One of the best comments I've seen on the situation. He's like, "Yeah, what about back in the day when pitchers were throwing 88-mile-an-hour lollipops and catchers had no arm strength and it's just the nature of the game. Like
everything is relative. Everything is relative. Like nobody's saying that Daniel Jones is the greatest quarterback ever because he threw for more yards than Johnny Unitas. Like nobody was throwing passes back then. Like it can be a relative conversation. We don't have to say that Ronald Acuna Jr. is, better than Babe Ruth because he's doing all these things, or Babe Ruth was better because he did all these things without all the rules or without all the, science behind, health and fitness and things like that. Look up the definition of mutually exclusive, and it applies in this situation perfectly. We can appreciate the greatness and recognize that Ronald Acuna Jr. in this moment in time is one of the greatest players this game has ever seen without trashing the other guys who have come before him. I don't know why people always say, well, the rules. He's only playing you can only beat who's in front of you. Ronald Acuna is playing to the rules. And we're seeing history. It's good for baseball.
There would be an argument to any of that if he wasn't leading the league in steals. If everyone had 70
it's not even close either.
If everyone had 70 steals or 40 steals or 50 steals or 60 steals, I would be like, okay, maybe there's an argument to that. No guy that is hitting 40 homers is coming even close. There's no other 40-40 watch, let alone 40-70 watch. Like, what are you talking about?
It's one of the same arguments. It's almost the exact same argument. I always hate to bring up Georgia football and shoehorn it into there, but everybody's like, oh, Georgia's only good because Stetson Bennett's 25. I'm like, well, why don't you go get a 25-year-old quarterback? Like, just throw him out there.
There's plenty of them out there.
Yeah, nothing is stopping you from doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Bo Nix, JT Daniels.
They're 25.
Sam Hartman.
Yeah, Esteury Ruiz is second in steals. I don't know what he's at. And he has single-digit home runs. The closest in both is Corbin Carroll. And he is like half. I mean, he's at 30.
Love me some Corbin Carroll.
He's sick. I'm not trying to dunk on Corbin Carroll.
I know.
To
I was
illustrate
that out.
the greatness of Ronald Acuna Jr. That the closest guy isn't even close. Isn't even close. This combination of speed and power has never before been seen in this sport.
No, I mean, I legitimately believe if he can hit this 40 homers, which he's now on pace to. And
I didn't think he had 23 games left. I thought there was less time than that. After last night, when I was like, oh yeah, he's 6 homers, 7 steals away, I was like, oh, he's probably gonna be like that when he went 39, 40 or whatever it was.
Yeah, 39, 41. Yeah, I mean, I think listen, it's almost like I don't want him to change his approach, but it's going to be pretty hard for him down the stretch not to start thinking home run every time he comes up to bat because we're not playing for anything. We pretty much locked up the number 1 seed. We've locked up the division for sure. That's just a foregone conclusion. So we're not playing for much. I don't want him to change his approach. I don't think he needs to, but it's going to be hard for him not to be thinking homer every time he comes up to bat because I genuinely believe we will never see in our lifetime a guy hit 40 homers and steal 70 bags. We're watching some of the greatest history this game has ever seen. This is a feat that will never be accomplished again. It might be one of those unbreakable records we talk about. Coming up after the break, the Detroit Lions, the feisty Lions, get a win over the Chiefs. We are going to talk about it.